No, I just mean it like the collective.
We're at least going to let
our
editor hear this part. Hi, Rust.
Okay.
Like the collective, we know the goal isn't to rip people off in trades, but I think it is like I want to have a team that's going to win 2-3 years in a row. Like, isn't that the point of playing in Dynasty? And don't use those bad tactics to get there. But like if I have that team, like I'm pretty happy with that.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that necessarily means the league isn't going to be good because there's a super team, and I think that eventually happens in Dynasty anyway after 3 to 5 years, where like there's clearly 2 or 3 teams that are just way better than everybody else.
I will say the league I built a super team in, it was also a free league, which I think is why I got bored with it, or at least a major part. But there is one league that has existed now 4 seasons, and I've made the championship game all 3 of its existence. That league I love because 1, it's for money. 2, it's a best ball dynasty, so it's a lot of fun because there's just chaos reigns. And 3, I am not much of a trash talker, but because I've made 3 championship games in a row, of course, I trash talk everyone. And my regular season record, all 3 years, no matter how many games we play, is always, I think, 10-6. Like every single year, it's been 10-6. So it's just like, wow, I'm unstoppable. What are you guys going to do about it? And last year, I even traded a first and Matt Ryan for Andrew Luck like a day before he retired. And then I turned around and traded Kerryon Johnson for Josh Allen and still made the championship because Josh Allen was a top 12 quarterback. It's just like, guys, are you even trying to stop me at this point?
One of the most crushing moments in my dynasty life was when Andrew Luck retired because I had I legitimately had him on half my Zooperflex teams. And it was like, oh, my season's literally over. Like I had 2 startups and I took him in the second round of both that year. And it was like you want to talk about value. Like I just lost my second round startup pick for nothing.
I still have him rostered in that league.
I do too. I saw on roster
for him.
Nope. I angrily sold him for like future thirds. I was like, that's it. I'm out.
I kept him in like 2 leagues. I've kept him, but yeah. Like in one of the pigs leagues, I had just traded for him to pair with Watson. I'm like, sweet, I'm set. And then I don't remember what I moved, but it was a lot.
To be fair, at least he destroyed pretty much everyone. And I know it's pretty straightforward, but do you guys have any questions about the show sheet?
No.
All right. Russell, did I get all the places that you wanted to highlight in your intro?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I will count us down and we will go. I'd love to keep going with this conversation, but I told my wife that I'd be about an hour and she's waiting to watch Killing Eve with me, which, by the way, if you guys don't watch, great show.
Good.
It's
cool.
Fantastic acting and just a great like spy thriller. Kind of gory. I don't know if that's your stuff. So when it gets like really gory or too suspenseful, I might look away at parts, but really good show. So anyway, I will count down and then we will begin. So 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another episode of Zooperflex. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Matt. Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Bobby. Looking forward to podcasting with Russell today. I've listened to him on a ton of shows, obviously, but I think this is my first time speaking with him, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's my first time speaking with Russell as well, and that's going to lead us right into our guest. So our guest today is Russell Clay. He's at Russell J. Clay on Twitter. He does both fantasy writing and NFL draft stuff for Fantasy Guru Site, which is at Fantasy Guru Site on Twitter, as well as college football DFS for Elite Fantasy HQ. Russell, thanks for joining us. And how are you today?
Great. How are you guys? I will say, having my first face-to-face experience with Matt, piercing blue eyes, folks. Absolutely. Just
I'm a White Walker,
slicing through my screen and into my soul. So a little perspective for if I seem, a little off my game, it's I
had the great pleasure of meeting Matt in person with his girlfriend, and I wanted to get his girlfriend alone for a second so I could just be like, I get it.
Shut up.
He was just walking down the road and you were like, that's the one, isn't it?
She does say that's my best feature, so I guess.
Yeah. Megan and I will have a lot to talk about. But Today, Russell had a particular quarterback that he wanted to talk about, and then I just selected two guys that I thought were kind of in the same bucket or just younger quarterbacks. So he wanted to talk about Dwayne Haskins, and then we're also going to talk about Daniel Jones, who at this point everyone knows I'm a Giants fan, and I also just love Daniel Jones for basically at this point not being Eli Manning, and Jared Goff. And we also, of course, have our animal of the week, but let's get right into it by talking about Dwayne Haskins. And Russell, I'll let you start since you're the one who really wanted to talk about him. What do you want to tell the people about Dwayne Haskins?
Well, number one, I think this might be the first podcast where someone actually wanted to talk about Dwayne Haskins. But I guess the way I'm looking at it is we all start from a certain point with players. You know, I started with that college profile, which I loved. At Ohio State, he was amazing in his final season. And I really loved him as a prospect. And then he went, you know, mid first round, 15th overall to the Washington Redskins last year. And I was like, okay, you know, he's going to start year one. He's going to be in a great position. Obviously, that supporting cast is not quite there yet. But if I think he's a really great prospect, I think he's going to figure it out. And year one looked similar to a lot of young quarterbacks where he wasn't ready. Like he just wasn't he wasn't ready to be taken out of the oven yet. And he was. And that was a problem. Very similar to when Jared Goff, his first year with Jeff Fisher and like the just disaster Rams team, he wasn't ready. Terrible supporting cast. And I just saw so many similarities with that. Obviously, Haskins isn't a big runner. I just think he's pretty clearly the starter going into this year. And maybe he flames out, and maybe by week 6, we're looking at Kyle Allen. But we're looking at a young quarterback who was a first-round pick and has a great profile, who's a starter and is basically, you know, he's thrown out the window by the dynasty community. And I don't mean, you know, just one person. I mean, like ADP wise, he's that last guy with like Teddy Bridgewater and, you know, the backups, Mariota and Derek Carr. And, you know, he's in there and it's like, wait, hold on. He's like 22 and just a first round pick last year. So I kind of like him as a guy, your third starter this year. He is a starter, and that's something I care about in Dynasty. As long as they're a starter going into the year, like I consider that a win. You know, kind of the Nick Foles. Obviously, it didn't work out in Jacksonville last year, but if I can have a third guy like that, it's kind of really nice to have for security purposes. So, yes, the risk is there, and he could be very bad. Like he could just be terrible, but like he's valued like he already is terrible, and I think there might be a little, you know, could give you a little bump, and he's easy to trade for, which is not something you can say for quarterbacks in Superflex.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Matt, what do you think about Dwayne Haskins?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Russell thinks. I mean, he's just so cheap. Like it's, do you want Dwayne Haskins or do you want, you know, he's down there like what Russ said with the backups like Andy Dalton. He's currently going on off the board at quarterback 24, just behind Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Stafford, and just ahead of the guys like Tom Brady, Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton, Josh Rosen, Derek Carr. He's just ahead of. So I mean, he's at the point where he's just so cheap. Like it's like, why not? He has the draft pedigree. They're clearly building an offensive weaponry around him with McLaurin kind of taking off, and I really like Andy Golden and. You know, we don't know what Antonio Gibson is going to be, but he's pretty exciting. So I think they're trying to build the right way. You know, Washington has been one of those teams where it's been on my if you just avoid that franchise, you're probably going to be okay. But you know, with Rivera in there, I think he's going to clean up that system a little bit. And while he hasn't really gone the distance, so to speak, as a coach, he has definitely made the teams where he's been at better. So I think that influence is going to be exciting for him. It's just, if he's going to go with Haskins or he's going to go with the one that he knows in Kyle Allen, you know. So, but I think the upside is there. You know, in Superflex leagues, he's not going to cost you more than like a late second round pick value, somewhere in that range, I would guess. So, I mean, why not? You know, like take a chance on somebody whose stock can vastly outperform his ADP where he's going. And, if he's a mid quarterback too in Superflex, if he ends up in that like 15 to 20 range next year, like you've made some money on that already. So I'm with Russell. I think he's worth taking a shot on. And if he doesn't pan out, then it's not like you've spent a lot to get there.
After this episode, his ADP is going to rise, and he's going to cost way more after people listen to both of you, because you just have that kind of sway on the community. It'll be like a late first. That said, I also was with Russell, where I liked Dwayne Haskins a lot coming out. I actually was somewhat mad when the Giants took Daniel Jones and did not take Dwayne Haskins. And I know Dwayne Haskins was equally mad. You could see it on draft night, just his face dropping, and also him kind of laughing at the Giants for doing it. His rookie season versus Daniel Jones' rookie season made me regret that a little less, but that doesn't mean that I don't think that Haskins can't still be someone good. And Russell pointed it out himself. There's guys like Jared Goff who struggled in their rookie season. If you go further back, Eli Manning and Matthew Stafford didn't have the best rookie seasons, but managed to become very usable fantasy assets. I think we as a community have been spoiled lately with rookies bursting onto the scene and just doing really well. And we forget that the quarterback position generally takes some time to develop. Maybe that's changing a bit because rookies are coming on quite frequently and doing well. But I'm also not willing to write guys off after one season, at least entirely. So if you guys are right and you can get Haskins for a second, I'd be all over that. At least in most of my leagues, I don't think that's true because people hold on to quarterbacks no matter who they are. But if other leagues or listener leagues or whoever is listening to this can get him for a second, I'd strongly encourage them to do that.
And I was wrong, by the way. I had the wrong month loaded. He's actually quarterback 29 right now. So, I mean,
is he behind Josh Rosen, by the way? Because I used to be a huge Josh Rosen fan, but even I can acknowledge that's just wrong.
He's not behind Josh Rosen, but he's behind most of the veterans and just ahead of like the Jared Stidhams of the world. So,
right.
I think I'd rather have Haskins than Stidham right now.
And again, we're not looking for him. I think we look at him and don't see the upside. We all don't see the upside, let's be honest. But if he can become a Jared Goff or become that middle range, whatever guy, I love those guys in Superflex because it's like, all right, I don't have to worry about, my quarterback. If I have a 3 quarterback set of one really good guy, one mediocre, and then one middling Dwayne Haskins, like that's a win. I'm buying Sam Darnold as well because, similar thoughts where probably never going to be a great player, but all right, well, maybe he'll get me some 3,525 touchdown seasons.
Yeah, and we talked about Sam Darnold last week or 2 weeks ago on Zooperflex with George Kritikos, and he was talking about how he thinks people are too down on Darnold too. So seems like you guys agree on that. And you mentioned Jared Goff. I want to transition to Goff. I'm going to talk briefly about Goff. I don't usually lead these off, but Goff is someone I recently tweeted about because there's this tool on Dynasty League football where you can see yearly ranks by position, and it does include week 17. But I was really interested to see that over the last 3 seasons, and again, it includes week 17, but Jared Goff managed to finish as a QB1. Even if it was back end, it was like QB 12, QB 9 one season, and like QB 10 another. And he's only 25, and yet he was down at like 16 or 17 in ADP, in ADP among quarterbacks. And so it's just kind of interesting because like I understand that the Rams offense did not look good last year. And I think a lot of that had to do with their offensive line. I also think a lot of that had to do with they were afraid to run the ball because they didn't trust Todd Gurley's knees at all. So I'm expecting a bounce back from Goff, and I actually think he's a decent buy low option. And it's also interesting that Russell compared him to like a middling option because I wrote an article a few seasons ago for Dynasty League Football about why you should buy Jared Goff. And it wasn't because I thought he had this incredible upside. It's because I thought he could basically be Eli Manning, where he would have longevity of having like these middling QB2 seasons with throwing in the occasional QB1 season. And that matters because, as Russell said, that locks you in at a quarterback spot in your Superflex, and you can focus elsewhere. Russell, I'll let you give your thoughts on that, and then we'll jump over to Matt.
Oh, I love that. Yes. And, Goff has been a main target for me. Again, another guy that I really liked out of college, but had that, I'm going to call it a stinky perception from his college career. People were never really high on him. They never really liked him. They thought he was a really overrated first overall pick. And maybe he was, but he's clearly a competent NFL quarterback, and those guys don't go away. He doesn't run the ball, which I like personally. I understand the value in fantasy of running quarterbacks, but from dynasty perspective, I want guys who are going to play 16 games. Again, I don't even care if you're scoring 15, 17 points a game. Please don't die. Like, please don't tear your ACL. That's all I want. So, if you can kind of tell the pattern now, I like Dwayne Haskins. I like Jared Goff. Like, I like all these pocket guys. But, I totally echo that. And the fantasy points have come pretty easy for him, even in less than perfect conditions. Last year wasn't great, but he does have good weapons still. And I kind of like what they did this offseason. Obviously, the offensive line needs to be addressed still, but young guy, has 3 competent seasons, was a pretty decent QB 2 years ago. And, I like him. And one other thing I'll say is that Carson Wentz is the definition of a guy who who doesn't necessarily run all the time, but is still a running risk because he literally throws his legs into oncoming linebackers. And that's the same thing as a running quarterback. He's gotten a little better this year, but the number one guy who I'm proud of is Deshaun Watson. He learned how to get out of bounds last year. He's not throwing himself in the guys. Shout out to Deshaun Watson.
And Matt, what do you think about Goff? And just real quick before we jump into that, before we started recording, we were talking about Andrew Luck and just how much that broke Russell's heart. So that really shows you how much he loves those pocket guys, because Andrew was like the pocket guy for a while. Mm-hmm. He could run a little bit, but he was definitely much more of a pocket passer. And Matt, what do you think of Goff and his pocket passing ability and not killing his ACLs?
I think Goff is a pretty obvious buy right now. In 2018, coming off his almost 4,700 yard, 32 touchdown season, he was kind of up in that top 10 discussion amongst dynasty quarterbacks. And then last year in his quote unquote down season, he threw for just 50 yards, less than he did in 2018. The problem was his touchdown rate, right? He threw 22 instead of 32 with a 3.5% touchdown rate, when the league average the last 5-6 years has been in the mid 4 range. So, and Goff himself, the previous 2 years was in the high 5 percentage rate for touchdown rate. So I think he's an obvious regression candidate there. Brandon Cooks going away is a little bit hurtful. It takes a little bit of speed out of their offense, I think, but they've kind of like come into their own as what their identity is as an offense. And that's going to be those really smooth route runners. They drafted another one this year with Van Jefferson, arguably the second best route runner in the class. So I think he's going to be fine. He started to put it together at the end of last season once they went to more 12 personnel and had both tight ends out there. So whether they continue that or they start to lean more heavily on the run game with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson from last year, I think it's all good news for Goff right now. So I think we're looking at somebody that is absolutely going to increase in value. Maybe not back into the top 10 range, but I bet he can easily get back into the quarterback 1 conversation for us by this time next year. So another one whose stock is probably going to rise in 2020, I think.
You know how on most podcasts they always argue and have people just fight each other? This podcast, we have a lot of people just agreeing and echo chamber. So, at least you can tell that we all believe in this particular take, but it is interesting to know.
We're going to fight. We're going to fight on a quarterback this show.
Let's fight. I actually don't disagree, but Van Jefferson, not a guy I was high on, not a guy I was very interested in, goes in the second round. One of my highest owned rookies.
Right.
So I think that is he's so cheap for a wide receiver.
You get a second round. you get a second round NFL receiver in the late third, early fourth of rookie drafts.
I mean, like I've seen that multiple times. Like this is real. That's happening. So it's like in that system, I'm in.
And next year, when Josh Reynolds is probably gone and Cooper Kupp could be gone, like all of a sudden you have immediate opportunity in year 2. So.
Little did you know that wasn't going to cause a fight because that's just another smart
disagreement
pick.
At all. I retract my statement.
Well, here's a question for you guys that I just thought of, and this could be because I recently tried to make a trade offer more or less to this effect. And it's who would you rather have going forward in Dynasty, and let's say for the next 2 to 3 seasons, Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff?
Goff, easily.
Yeah. Goff, no question. I thought you were going to go with like a hard one, like Lamar Jackson or Jared Goff. I'd be like, oh, I don't know, bro. No, I'm just kidding. But I will say Cousins seems like a guy who's going to hang around, and I don't hate, like, this is the first offseason where I've kind of looked at him and been like, you know what? Not a terrible, like, I wouldn't mind having him as my third guy because I feel like he's going to be a starter. Even if he flames out in Minnesota, he's going to probably get another job somewhere. So I kind of like guys in that tier where he's probably got 3 to 5 years left of starter. So,
and if Dalvin holds out, he could have to throw a lot.
Right. So,
I mean, I don't know how realistic that is, but it is a possibility.
He's like a discount Matt Stafford. And Matt Stafford is not really that expensive either. So I'd probably rather have Stafford, but
Well, I'll just make sure I don't release this episode before they respond to my offer of like Kirk Cousins. It was actually Kirk Cousins and Alshon Jeffrey for Jared Goff, but this episode will not come out before then.
If you could unload, if you could get at Alshon to get anything. Yeah,
Alshon walking around in.
I recently traded Alshon. Well, it was Alshon and Traquan Smith for. Why am I blank? Oh, KJ Hamler and a 3rd round pick.
But why?
Okay.
But why would they do that? I like KJ Hamler. He's another guy. 2nd round pick, 3rd round ADP. All in.
Yeah. I'm not a big Drew Lock fan, but at the price of Alshon Jeffrey for what you just mentioned, I went, yeah, sure. Why not? Okay.
Yeah.
If you can get him off of your roster for almost anything.
Yeah.
I bought in way too hard on him, on Alshon, once he went to Philly. Like I thought
so did I.
A perfect thing. And like, he's going to be healthy again, guys, for real. He's actually going to be healthy.
Yeah, I don't think that was a bad process play. I just think he got too hurt.
Yeah.
Like, he's just got so many injuries now that there's nothing you can really do.
Well, we're going to stay talking about the NFC East, and we're going to talk about Daniel Jones. I'm going to let both of you guys go first, and this time we'll talk with Matt first, just because I think anyone who knows me knows how I feel about Daniel Jones, but I want to see whether I'm way off base or whether you guys agree. Maybe this will be the one we fight on. So, Matt, go ahead and tell us what you think about Daniel Jones.
This is definitely the one where you're going to fight on. I mean, from a fantasy point of view, I think he's fine. He's going to give you those, those really boom games. I think he have a 5 touchdown, no interception game, maybe a couple 4 touchdown games. But I think he's also going to be that quarterback that can absolutely kill your week. I think he's the same guy that can also throw 3 interceptions in a week and have 18 fumbles in a season. But I do think the Giants are kind of playing to his strengths a bit. Coming out, I thought he needed to be in like a really quick passing West Coast style offense, and they've certainly surrounded him with those types of weapons with Golden Tate and Slayton and Sterling Shepard and those guys. So I like the way the position they're putting him in. The problem for me is Matt Waldman talks about this with quarterbacks, and that's the slow processor. Like he's someone who has trouble still, I think, identifying coverage, especially once he's going through this progression. So if that first read, that first quick out, like isn't there, then I think that's where he runs into problems and starts trying to process it and just isn't quite there in terms of identifying coverages in that regard. So from an NFL perspective, I think he's maddening, but from a fantasy perspective, if you're looking for somebody that can win you a week, I think he definitely has that upside. I just think that it's that razor's edge where he could also tank your week. So for me, echoing off the board now at quarterback 11, that's too rich for me. If we're talking about the difference between Haskins and Samuel Jones, I would rather have Haskins at his price than Jones at his current price. So I don't know. I don't.
Until you added in the pricing, I was ready to like reach through the screen and just punch in the face.
I'm not. I would rather pay a late second round pick, rookie pick, than a mid first, which I think is what you're probably going to have to pay for Jones at this point. So he's not going to be on too many of my rosters, but I understand the appeal, and I do think the Giants are treating him like the exact way they need to treat him for him to be successful.
And Russell, what do you think about Daniel Jones?
Well, from a situation perspective, he's in a pretty rare situation. I love his supporting cast. I think it's incredible. And in terms of a quarterback succeeding, I think it's one of the easiest places for a quarterback to succeed in the NFL. I mean, you have Saquon, who, you can dump it off 1 yard and you could get 70, yards per attempt wise. That's fantastic. Golden Tate, one of the best yak guys in the league, obviously hasn't been healthy the last couple of years, which has been a bummer. Big Golden Tate guy. Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, really the injuries could hurt things here, but and he has Slayton, who's another yards per attempt guy. So I think we could be looking at a situation where maybe he's not a great quarterback, but his numbers are super inflated by his supporting cast. And that's how I'm looking at him. And totally shocked me, the combine last year, and then it showed in the NFL. This dude's super athletic. And, they're not going to run that Josh Allen offense, but he's like a hyper athlete for a quarterback. So, I don't, again, that could make him run more. So I don't love that, but from a long-term perspective, but for the next couple of years, I will say, to Matt's point, I don't necessarily look at him as a long-term asset yet. I need to see another year. I need to see him become, a little progress a little more as a quarterback, but short-term, next 2-3 years, he's kind of like a much higher end Mitch Trubisky right now, and could turn into a long-term guy if I see some progression passing wise this year. So
I was going to say that you basically just described Blake Bortles, which is why Bobby probably likes him so much.
Wow. There's so much shade being thrown at Daniel Jones. So much shade.
And I, as I was saying it, I didn't realize how much shade I was throwing until it was coming out of my mouth. But I am pretty optimistic. And we were like, the community again, as a whole, we were very wrong about Daniel Jones last year. A lot of people, and I didn't think he was going to be very good either. So, that rookie draft ADP, you made a huge profit if you picked Daniel Jones last year. So you got a starter. You probably have at least 2 to 3 more years. I think he bought himself that after his rookie year. So you're already winning. Like, whoever got him, you don't take my shade to heart. You already won. So that's where I'll end there.
Well, let me give the positive Daniel Jones, since at least for fantasy purposes. And I'm also going to give it from, I guess, the real life perspective too. I wrote an article about Daniel Jones, and at this point, I can't actually remember all the stats. I had to look up my own article, and I couldn't do it in time before I started talking. But what I do remember is that from the time he became a starter, for fantasy purposes anyway, he actually outscored Kyler Murray on a points per game basis. And everyone is hyping up Kyler Murray, and I understand it. He was in this offense that's supposed to be super exciting, and he's the first overall pick and all this stuff going on for him. And yet, as Matt was talking about, the price difference between Dwayne Haskins and Daniel Jones, for a while there was a huge price difference, and there still is, between Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones, at least for fantasy. And so if you're telling me at their price, I will also take Daniel Jones over Kyler Murray. And in fact, so this is something I've mentioned on a few podcasts now, and this was me just being way too confident, and I'm probably going to regret it. But I went on the GOAT District podcast with Dan Williamson, and he is a huge Kyler Murray fan, and this was before the Hopkins trade. I made him a bet that Daniel Jones this season would be within a point per game or better of Kyler Murray. And at minimum 10 games played, the loser has to wear jorts and post a picture on Twitter of themselves wearing jorts. Oh, no. So I may be wearing jorts at the end of the season. I'm not feeling as confident after the Hopkins trade as I was when I made that bet. That said, so you guys hit on some key things for Jones, I think. And obviously I'm giving the Giants fan bias here a bit. But the fact that none of his weapons were healthy at the same time last year, Saquon was hurt for some time, Tate was suspended, Shepard had the concussions, Engram was hurt. So if you can get, and it's a big if, but if you can get all of those guys on the field at the same time, that's going to be a huge boost to his output and his fantasy output. And also a guy that you guys didn't even mention that he developed huge chemistry with was Darius Slayton. And if Slayton can develop at all, I mean, I'm not saying young players always develop, but if he can develop at all, that could also help Jones. And Jones, one thing I do remember, as a rookie, Jones had, I believe it was the highest percentage of 400-yard games when you only account for games he actually started as a rookie of all time in the NFL. So that's his upside. I'm not saying he does have his floor, right? Matt talked about it. He fumbles, he throws interceptions, he maybe has a bad processor. But those are things I think you can work on. We've seen some quarterbacks who had those issues early in their career, like Ben Roethlisberger, for example, managed to make it a little bit less of an issue. And I'm not one for like those best shape of their lives type things, but Jones did put on 10 pounds this season to try to help him with some of like the strip sacks and fumbles. So it might actually hurt his mobility, but then according to Russell, that will mean he just won't tear his ACL. So I guess it's a win-win. That is my impassioned defense of Daniel Jones.
So I think you made a great point about Kyler. I think that ADP, yes, he does have that upside, and yes, I get it. And honestly, I wouldn't even hate taking him. He's a great dynasty asset right now. But man, we're really high praising this guy. Similar to Baker 2 years ago, where it's like, I'm still confident Baker's going to be a long-term starter, but we saw that regression. I actually kind of like Daniel Jones' ADP right now. From where I saw him going in these Superflex startups I did, it seemed pretty reasonable to me. And I remember I didn't get him, but he was like, I was within a few picks of getting him. So, I don't hate it. And again, I secretly love the Giants, even though I'm not a fan of them, because I love all their players. So, and they picked up a pretty good lineman in the draft, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So
they addressed the O-line a bit, which is something else I failed to mention. And then like the thing that I am worried about so I'll give somewhat of the other side and help you guys out here by arguing against myself, is even though Pat Shurmur was a bad head coach, we do know he was kind of a quarterback whisperer when he could take someone like Case Keenum on the Vikings and make him look like a good quarterback. So I am a little worried about that. And I also, being a Giants fan for so long, I just can't believe that Jason Garrett is good at anything. But at the same time, I have seen the stats that say like, Dak Prescott had all of his like best seasons. And even before that, Romo had some great seasons when he was the offensive coordinator. So there's some optimism, but at the same time, it is a new coaching system and a new offense. So he may have to adapt to that and it may not go as planned. But I'm still Team Jones, and I'm higher on him than Matt, and I will not even put him in the same sentence as Dwayne Haskins.
Let's play a game, Bobby. I'm assuming he's below the top 6-ish guys for you. Is that reasonable? All right. So let's say Daniel Jones or Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz.
Okay, Daniel Jones or Josh Allen.
Ooh.
Daniel Jones.
Okay, so would you say he's like quarterback 8-ish for you? We can keep going. Baker Mayfield?
Probably, I'd go.
You can play two, Russ. You can play two, Russ.
So I'm much lower, I guess.
Yeah, me too. So let's keep going. How about Joe Burrow?
I'd take Burrow.
Okay. How about
I think I'm just lower on Allen than you guys are. I will say this now. Even though I have him on that team that I mentioned earlier has made all those championships, I am worried that Allen is the next Bortles or the next Bortled. And I use that terminology to mean if you get Bortled, it means you're really good for fantasy, but you're not so good for real life and you lose your job.
So like Daniel Jones then?
No.
Oh,
get out of here.
Okay, Josh Allen is a much more like, he's so run heavy.
Yeah.
And again, this is great for win now dynasty teams. If you have Josh Allen, the next 2 years are going to be great. But it's that injury risk. I just hate injuries so much that I try to minimize them as much as I can. And he's a guy where I'm like, okay, through 2 years, no injuries. But if you keep running head into NFL linebackers, you're going to get hurt. And I love him. He's fun to watch. Like, I really do think Josh Allen's fun to watch, but man. And you mentioned, if he gets a few lower body injuries, the passing isn't there. So,
I mean, and the passing already kind of isn't, being completely honest.
So I don't think it's that ridiculous to have Daniel Jones over Josh Allen.
No, I don't. I think you can make an argument for him pretty much anywhere after 7-ish, I think.
By the way, I would take Tua over Daniel Jones. And I've mentioned this on other podcasts before, but I obviously, when Eli Manning was getting towards the end of his career, I'd watch more college football because I was trying to see who would be the next quarterback of the Giants or who I wanted to be. And I'd been watching Tua his entire career. And before Daniel Jones came along, I was like, okay, the Giants are bad enough that they're actually in position to draft this amazing quarterback. And then this year, they were legitimately in position to draft Tua. And I didn't want them to because I do believe in Jones, but there was still part of me that was like, maybe just like do it and then Josh Rosen, Daniel Jones.
So I have a question for you guys, and I know I'm not the host, but
go for it.
So
you can be. Do you want to be?
There's this tier of quarterbacks for dynasty rankings, and it leads into what Matt was talking about much earlier in the show of like rankings are kind of whatever. Okay, who plays more NFL seasons from 2020 on? Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, Daniel Jones, Josh Allen, or Aaron Rodgers? Like, who plays more seasons? Because I saw this personally with Drew Brees, where he was getting sold as an older quarterback at like 32, and it was wait, are you guys sure about this? And it's like, could Matt Ryan play till he's 40? Definitely, I think.
Yeah. So same with Stafford, and that's my argument with Aaron Rodgers too. Is I know we're burying him because he hasn't been good in several years now, but we're treating him like we did with Brady at 36. Like if you sold Brady at 36, you maybe you made a little bit of profit, but you also lost out on six seasons of Zooperflex quarterback production, and Rodgers is 36, but I could see him playing till 40 pretty easily, whether it's with the Packers or not. So these older, but yeah, to answer your question, I'd say Stafford just because he's 32, and I definitely see him playing until 40. So he's got 8 years left, and he's not going to run head on into linebackers and defensive linemen, like you said, Russell.
As much as I like Jones, I do acknowledge the possibility that he ends up not being a starter after his rookie season, or not his rookie season, his rookie contract, or even after that. And so the fact that Stafford or Ryan have already showed it has made me, and also the fact that guys are playing till they're 40, I would probably bet on those guys. It makes me feel a little sad to say that because it means within 8 seasons, the Giants could be looking for a quarterback again, but it is a possibility. So I'd probably bet on those guys if I had to.
We can look at Cam Newton too in that as a comparison for that, like he's only 31 and doesn't have a job. I am in the camp that think he is going to be a starter again, whether it's this year or next year. I'm not sure, but we've clearly seen his health degrade to a point where it's a question of him being in the lineup, and he's only 31. And we're talking about these guys that are 32 and we see playing till 40. Josh Allen, these guys can be could end up being that Cam Newton kind of player where by the time they're 31, they're just so busted up, it's hard to even find a spot for him in the league.
I will say, I believe this time next year, though, at least for fantasy purposes, having Daniel Jones in the same conversation as those guys, people will be like, oh no, Daniel Jones is easily a top 10 dynasty quarterback.
So this is the other thing. One of these young guys that's undervalued right now is going to end up being a 10-year plus starter. So
for sure,
Jones, Darnold, I'll throw Haskins in there because I like him. Allen, Locke, Mayfield. Like one of these young guys is going to end up playing till they're 40. So
Bridgewater.
There you go.
Figuring out which one is the
I'm kind of serious.
security for your dynasty league.
Bridgewater is a weird one because I kind of forgot. He like zoomed out of my mind after that leg injury. And it's like, wait, no, Teddy Bridgewater was a great prospect.
Yeah.
And a starter before that. So I laughed, but now I'm slowly coming into focus here.
We talked about it. Was it last episode, Bobby? I don't remember. We talked about him quite a bit, but yeah, like him coming in with Joe Brady and all those weapons in Carolina. We were talking about DJ Moore before we started recording, and like it's just I don't know how he doesn't succeed. And if he succeeds in Carolina, then he's going to get another contract, whether it's with them or another team. So
yeah, anyway, a lot of quarterbacks tend to be retreads, so that is the case. It's just I personally this might have also been in reaction to something we discussed last week with Stompy talking about Drew Lock being the next second-year quarterback breakout and me throwing up in my mouth a little bit hearing that because I am now the self-declared president of the anti-Lock fan club. But I much rather have Daniel Jones than Drew Lock. I know that. I much rather have Daniel Jones than a bunch of the second-year guys. So for me to stick to my guns, I do have to say that I think this time next year we will be talking about Daniel Jones as if he belongs, not necessarily in that top 6, but the top 10. I will give him that.
I won't even say I caped up for Drew Lock during the draft process, but I was like, hey guys, he's not terrible. And you should have seen the mentions I got of just like, you're a terrible person and all this stuff. And it's like, I do think he can be okay. I don't think he's a long-term guy. I can see him turning into like a Derek Carr or Andy Dalton, though. That's kind of what I can see, where he starts way more years than we expect, but he's kind of around. Great supporting cast, though. That's the only thing where it's like
we must have opposite followers because I like trash Drew Lock and everyone's like, "How dare you, sir?"
This offseason, because coming out of Missouri. It was like, this guy has no awareness. Like he has a big arm, but he doesn't know what to do with it. That was his perception in college because he could never beat, he was in the SEC. He could never beat any of the top teams and embarrassed himself against, I remember Georgia specifically, he got destroyed. And after that, it was like, okay.
No, it was this offseason. Anytime I even say something like I could say like, oh, Drew Lock, I think will be a good real life quarterback in that he can win some games and like manage his team to that, but be a terrible fantasy quarterback. And everyone's like, you have offended me personally and I challenge you to a duel. And they like take off their glove and then slap me across the face. So ouch. Yeah, it's an interesting time, but we are going to transition from our quarterback talk to an animal that I believe we may have covered in the past, but
can we do a fox?
I mean, Matt, did you look up Fox Facts or did you look up Cheetah Facts?
I mean, I have Cheetah Facts on online, but we can switch if you want.
Right,
There's a bunch of different kinds of foxes, though. So,
is there a particular fox that you like, Russell?
the orange ones.
Just the red foxes.
Yeah.
So, Russell, while Matt looks that up, can you tell us why do you like foxes in particular?
Well, I've sort of been you spoke about a duel. I've been in a duel with foxes all my life. Growing up on a farm, we had a lot of bigger animals, horses and cows, but there was a period where my mom was like, I love chickens. I'm going to get some chickens. We had a little house and like a little fenced in area. And we're like, oh, cute chickens. And then I lived in Western Mass. So there's a lot of foxes up there. And just one by one, it was just like every night we lost the battle. Like we lost the wars and the battle. We just got crushed. And I just love how they figure stuff out. They seem to have just outsmarted me in many facets. I feel like I've also lost a few cats along the way to foxes. So living out in the wilds, you respect nature. So that's my take on foxes.
I was going to say, this all sounds like reasons you might really dislike foxes. It's interesting that you've gone the other way. I respect
my adversaries, yeah.
And the entire time you were talking about that, I don't know if you saw the movie Fantastic Mr. Fox, but that's what it reminded me of, just because like there's George Clooney's fox talking about how they're going to like pull off this heist to steal the chickens from this farm. So
it's real.
Maybe
Fantastic Mr. Fox is so good. It's so good.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, check out the movie. We're not paid at all by Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks.
I wish Wes Anderson paid us. Can we get them as a sponsor?
Wes Anderson, we love your movies. So if you want to sponsor us, we will gladly talk about your movies. Matt, have we bought you enough time to talk about foxes?
Yes, and the thing that I was going to say before I looked it up is my favorite thing about foxes in general is that they're a kind of a canid species or a dog type species that they're so cool because they will continue to hunt even when they're full. Like they kind of cache food. So like I work with Arctic foxes at the zoo, and you keep feeding her, and it's clear she's not eating it, but as soon as she takes it from you, she'll go and she'll bury it somewhere. So that's as someone who likes to eat, I kind of like that. Someone who likes to eat and then goes to the grocery store and then buys all the food that I don't need because I'm already full. I kind of appreciate that about foxes. One really other cool thing about them is they have really good hearing. One way, if you're looking at an animal's face, one way to tell kind of like what the most important sensory organ is for them is generally by the size of it. So foxes have these big, gigantic ears. They can rotate about 270 degrees. And there's some facts here saying that they can actually hear a watch that's ticking 40 yards away. So that seems pretty cool to me that they can hear that well. And just a kind of a side story, I work with maned wolves, which are not foxes, but they kind of look like red foxes on stilts. So people think that they're in the fox family. But to kind of like nail home the point of how good the hearing is for these kind of animals with their ears that big, I was once given a keeper talk. And there was like some rustling in the grass over next to me, and one of the wolves was just kind of laying down and like perked up when that rustling in the grass happened, and she like immediately ran over to the spot and like dug down and pulled out a vole or a gopher or something like right in front of the people I was talking to. So they really can use that hearing. And if you've seen like the Arctic foxes too, you can watch like on Discovery Channel or whatever, you see them hunting in the snow, and they like do these leaps up in the air, like, and they land face first into the snow, and then all of a sudden pull out whatever it is, whatever small mammal they're hunting. So hearing is so cool for these guys. So that's one of my favorite parts of foxes. In terms of their conservation status, red foxes are doing pretty fine. They're on the low end spectrum, as Russell kind of alluded to.
They're getting a lot of chickens from Russell's farm.
Yeah. The IUCN classifies them of least concern. So I don't really think we necessarily need to give a charity out for them, but any kind of canid species that is endangered, like a maned wolf, for example, you could go and donate for.
When you were talking about the 40 and them being able to hear watches ticking, I thought they must run really fast 40s then, because they could hear the watch going the whole time.
Ooh, let me look that up. I don't know how fast
are they
actually
even
run.
Fast? I feel
31 miles an hour maximum.
Oh, that's wow. Okay, that's pretty fast.
It's faster than a human anyway.
I recently took up running again, and that's like at least 6 times faster than me. So I'd be pretty done for if a fox came after me.
Tape up those knees, Bobby. We're not
and they can leap.
Young kids anymore.
They can leap 6 feet in the air, so they can go up and high point those balls.
There we go.
From Daniel Jones.
Yeah. Foxes. So what we're saying is foxes would be great receivers.
Yeah.
There you have it. Well, foxes would be, in this case, if you're saying they're Daniel Jones's receiver, I think that Darius Slayton might be a fox in disguise.
And Golden Tate's probably like a gray fox. Yeah.
He's a little bit older, ready to see it. It's fine. We are going to transition to our extinction of the week, and as I've explained every week, and for the benefit of our guests and potentially new listeners, these are things that we would rather go extinct rather than animals. In the past, my examples have often had to do with like slow walkers, because that drives me crazy. But it could be anything. It could be a particular drink. It could be Peeps. It could be people. It can really be anything that's on your mind. So, Matt, do you have anything you want to lead off with this week?
Mine's kind of boring, I guess. I'm going to piggyback off of our last show and go back to mask wearing. We kind of talked about it in general, but my new pet peeve this week is people that wear the mask, but don't wear it correctly. And they have it hanging below their nose or on their chin or whatever. And at this point, I think we can really kind of safely say that if you are not wearing a mask, you're wearing it incorrectly. It's basically just like a big fuck you to the rest of the world at this point, I think. So like you're walking down the street, pull up your mask, wear it correctly. We're seeing gigantic spikes in Texas and Florida and Arizona. You know, my mom works at a casino that opened up temporarily in Phoenix, and now they're closed down again. So if we ever want to get back to normalcy, whatever that looks like, please just wear your mask correctly, because it's right there, man. Just pull it up. It's all you got to do. You already have it on your face. Just pull it up.
Shout out Arizona. I'm in Tucson.
Oh, yeah? My parents are in Phoenix. Maybe next time I'm out there after all of this is back to normal, we can hook up.
Yeah, definitely.
Russell, do you have something you'd like to go extinct? And it doesn't have to necessarily do with the social issues. They've just been easy to target because they're bothering everybody.
Can it be that I just would rather nobody else be on the road with me at the same time?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't want to say the human species, but I'd much prefer to drive on roads with no other cars. But beyond waiting in lines and cars, I feel like I want to say my procrastination skills. I ran out of toilet paper this week, and I knew it was going to happen. And I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but you see the rolls coming to the end. You know it's the last one. You maybe have a few empty cartridges next to it, and you're like, because you're too lazy to pick those up. And you're like, I need to get toilet paper. And every time that toilet flushes, it's just totally out of my mind. And I just forget and I don't go. And it's happening with hand soap too. I got maybe 5 pumps left, 5 more hand washes, and I'm going to be out. And
you know what the trick?
I'm doing nothing about it. Why am I doing nothing about it?
You know what the trick is with the hand soap, right? Is you just let it get to that point and then you just fill it with water and it's good to go for like another couple of weeks, man. Like it's diluted a little bit, but it still suds up and cleans your hands. I'm telling you, that is the
Matt, he just said he wished it'd go extinct and you're helping him keep it alive.
That's right.
I'm reinforcing it.
The terrible species, and it needs to be done. But my girlfriend actually did that. So she put it in, and now that's running out. So that's what I mean. This is a problem. Like I'm having like people intervention, she's helping me, and it's still just a disaster. So I ended up buying toilet paper the other day, but not until I was out, right. And sometimes my electric bill, even though I can pay it, shout out to me, it's just like $200, and I'm like, what did I just
$200?
Yeah, because I guess you are for 3 months.
It's like 4 billion degrees there, like the surface of the sun. So you probably have to run your AC all the time.
When you forget 3 months, and then you're just like, was I in a coma for 3 months? What just happened to me? I need to pay this. So there you go.
Yeah,
you got to get a bidet, man. That is the real solution for toilet paper. I'm telling you, it is.
About these before.
I'm telling you, man. Jeff Miller, like he said, it was one of the best purchases he ever made, and I was
on my old podcast.
I'm like, you are crazy. There's no way this is the best purchase ever. And then I bought a cheap $30 one from Amazon, and it's up there in terms of my best purchases. Absolutely.
Wait, you're serious right now?
I'm absolutely serious with you.
Yeah, on my old podcast,
you'll use like one or two. You use like 1 or 2 squares and that's it. And you're done. Like your toilet paper will last forever.
Yeah. Jeff came on and we talked about football for like half an hour. And then we talked about his bidet for like another half hour because that's just typical Jeff behavior.
That is the most typical Jeff behavior I've ever heard beyond posting shower selfies online. I might have to DM him about this.
I'm telling you, man.
I will back it up and say that my brother-in-law, who pays no attention to Jeff whatsoever, once said that the best purchase, and he was sitting next to his wife who was wearing her engagement and wedding ring. And he said, the best purchase I ever made in my life was my bidet. And she looked at him and then he just turned to her and said, I know what I said.
Dude, you get yourself a bidet and a squatty potty and you elevate that toilet game.
Wow. The game's changing.
The Zooperflex podcast brought to you by bidets.
Game changer.
And Wes Anderson. No, but so yeah, that's an interesting one. I hope that you managed to work on that or invest in a bidet, I guess. Mine is going to be, so last week we discussed that I recently have bought a house and I'm currently living in the suburbs while I wait to move to the house because I'm living with my parents at the moment. But I've been driving around town a bit more for random things I have to do for the house and just in general. And so my old stuff used to be like, oh, my annoyances are walking around the city, hence slow walkers. Now it's all like driving stuff like Russell was talking about, where, yeah, I would totally be on board if no one was on the road with me. But this one's very specific, which is I was pulled into a parking spot to do something. And while I was in there, somebody parked directly behind me in a packed parking spot where there wasn't actually a legal parking spot. And they just stalled there. And they could see that I was clearly trying to back out. And so they made no movement whatsoever to back away or move. And so I had to do not like a 3-point turn, but basically like a 5-point turn to avoid hitting all these cars just because this woman thought that she had every right to be directly behind me. So basically, also, I think for lack of a better word, she's basically a Karen. So I'm just going to combine it and say, like, I hope that Karens go extinct.
Dude, that would have been a situation where I would have lost my mind. Like maybe it's because I'm getting old, but like I have so little patience for people that have no self-awareness these days. If you park me in, I'm going to get out and yell at you. It just,
yeah,
it's horrible.
I go back and forth because I was once a very horrific driver. Like I won't talk about my legal troubles, but I may have 1 or 2 speeding tickets on my life toll here. And I'm now a right lane driver. I'm now a very respectful driver. However, age 22, Russ, probably a disaster. So
well,
I have that experience and I feel like I have some amends to make.
Speeding tickets don't necessarily make you a bad driver. I'm just putting that out there because I had some speeding tickets too. And I'm also a right lane driver these days where I like cruise control. I got a ticket once for going 66 in a 65 zone. And no, I'm not.
Shut up.
For going a mile over.
No way.
So I had to go back to 5-hour the 5-hour safety course. And everyone's going around and they're like, why are you here? Oh, I'm a new driver. Why are you here? Oh, I was drunk driving, got a DUI. I ran someone over. I did this. What did you do? I was going 66 in a 65 zone like the badass I am. What's up?
I find that so, I mean, obviously it happened, but that's ridiculous. I mean, I know California is in general like a different world when it comes to driving. If you're going 85 in the fast lane, you're going too slow. It's kind of California. And I have never, I'm telling you, I probably average like 80 miles an hour in a 65 zone all the time. And I have never gotten a ticket.
Officers have to hit their quotas. That's why.
Oh, absolutely. They do.
The driving differences from West Coast to East Coast is wild. I thought people in mass were bad drivers, and I just realized they are not bad drivers. They're just very assertive, and they're like, hey, get moving or I'm going.
Yeah.
And in Tucson, it's like you get in a lot of these situations where it's like, no, you go, no, you go, no, you go. And you're like, someone make a decision.
Oh yeah, it's like that in like the Pacific Northwest too. Like you come up to a 4-way stop and everybody's being so courteous and nobody goes and delays everyone.
Go.
God damn it, just go.
Being in the Northeast, I can tell you that doesn't happen. Everyone's doing the rolling stops and like everyone's just like, I'm going right now.
Yeah.
Actually, my drivers, this is also another quick tangent, but when I was taking driver's ed back in the day, my driver's ed teacher literally told me, you hesitate, you die. So that just shows you the Northeast attitude towards driving.
Yeah, and so my transition to Tucson, people don't pull up past the crosswalk, and like in Tucson, nobody does that. So the first 3 months I was here, I was like pulling up to red lights, and I was like over the line, like way over, and everyone's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is just that's how we do it in Massachusetts." I don't know.
Well, we have talked about a lot of different things. Especially in terms of the extinctions, but we're going to very quickly, because I like to make sure this is part of the show now too. If you have something positive you'd like to highlight, just because as we referenced earlier, there's a lot going on in the world and it's not all positive. So it's nice to bring up anything positive. It can be personal note, someone you want to shout out, whatever it is. Matt, do you have a positivity highlight for this episode?
I really don't, man. It was a pretty negative week. I'm just going to be honest with you. This week was a very, very frustrating week for me. So I'm going to follow my mom's advice. And if I don't have anything nice to say, I'm just not going to say anything.
Matt's positivity highlight is laughing about Russell's toilet paper and soap situation this week.
I have one, actually. My positivity one is that we are back doing a pretty regular schedule with this show, Bobby. So that's true. That's exciting and positive, I think.
That makes me feel guilty because I'm about to start my job and then I can't make any guarantees.
It's just for this week, though. That the positive about this week. We can go that it's a negative next time.
That's true. Russell, what's your positivity of the week, if you have one?
Well, I will say, like, obviously, I understand the world right now is absolutely chaotic, but in my little shell of the world, like, the sports world seems to be coming back, and that is great news, not only for my employment status, but just like my happiness levels. And obviously we're not there yet. And the COVID testing has been, it seems like Adam Schefter has to tweet out every player that is positive, which I don't enjoy, but it does seem like NFL is going to be coming back. NBA just released their schedule. Dana White and the UFC has been going strong. Golf's coming back. So that's my little positivity from the week. Otherwise, I'm just trying to, I think we're all just trying to keep it together right now. I haven't seen many people in the last 3 months. Oh, and I got a haircut. So there you go.
I am so jealous. I need a haircut so bad.
I didn't have one for 3 months, and I finally got one. Gave the girl a nice big tip, and that was probably my positivity for the week. There you go.
Was it scary getting the haircut?
I was the only one.
Everybody. Yeah. Okay. You're both wearing masks and all that.
So
nice. I might have to try to do that because it's getting ridiculous. Like, this is the longest I think my hair has ever been.
But it highlights your piercing blue eyes.
Yeah, You can be a surfer bro. You can be a zookeeper. Like, you got a lot of versatility right now. I really don't have those moves. Like, I tried the long hair and I just look like, I've been in the wild. So,
well, my positivity is going to be, it's not going to sound like a positive thing because I think most people don't look forward to this, but I got my work laptop this week. And I got my access to my work email. And I've mentioned before, I'm starting a new job, which I got after completing grad school. And seeing the email was just like the culmination of like, okay, this is real. And I'm actually starting a job, which not everyone has right now. So I'm appreciative of that. And two, it's just seeing a lot of hard work actually pay off for something that's real. So it's my work email, which I know drives a lot of people crazy, but I'm happy to have one and see it.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, I watched my sister go through grad school, and like, shout out to you guys. I didn't have the heart or maybe the brains to complete that. And anyone who can get through that whole very stressful process, like, I have so much respect for.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Although I don't know that I have more brains than pretty much anybody else, but I do appreciate it. And with that said, we are going to wrap it up here. Russell, we want to thank you again for joining us and just quickly let the people know where they can find you and what you have going on.
Sure. You can find me at Russell J. Clay on Twitter. I'm a Fantasy Guru lead staff writer. We got a bunch of stuff coming up for the season that will be happening. We got live chats. I do weekly Dynasty roster reviews, which is really a fun thing I've been doing this summer. And, we got a lot of good content coming out. Tyler Beaker, really, really smart guy. And I won't say he's smarter than me, but he's certainly more analytically inclined than I am. Armando Marsal and really good staff over there. So come join us and hang out if you want to.
And really quick, just because I know Russell won't point this out about himself, he is a wizard when it comes to using PFRef. And for those who don't know the shorthand, that's just Pro Football Reference. And I like to think that I'm pretty good at using the different databases or whatever. And then I see the stuff that he does and I'm just like, all right, I should just either tell him to search this stuff for me or like give up. So if you ever have like a database question on Pro Football Reference, make sure you tweet at him because he can definitely help you out there. And Matt, you have always a million things going on. You're on what feels like 20 different podcasts.
What? Get out of here.
You have your piercing blue eyes, but people can find those piercing blue eyes at Matt Price FF. You still host or are co-host of the Dynasty League Football main podcast. You are involved with the GGN pod and this pod. Am I missing any of the 17 others that I forgot to mention?
That's really it, man. And podcasting has been bad for my writing. I have not written this season nearly as much as I have in past years. But I do still do the mailbag. It's a tough article to write though, because if you don't have questions, then you have to make them up. And I don't like making up. I like having real questions. So I did just submit another article today. But if you do want some questions answered in more of a long-term form format than we can do on Twitter, then submit those questions for the DLF mailbag. And whenever I have enough questions, I put out an article. So that's the only other thing really that I got going on other than the podcast.
Make sure you get those questions into Matt. Definitely makes the job much easier. You can find me at Rekt Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy. I am contractually obliged to say I'm not a Twitter tough guy, despite what John Bosch wants you to believe. You can find my work on Dynasty League Football. Much like Matt, I have not written as much as I'd like to. I've found that I've enjoyed podcasting much more than writing lately, so I might be trending more towards doing the podcast. And also, because of my job starting, I just don't quite have as much time. But when I do write, you can find it there. And as always, you can find us, even though you're already listening to the show, at Zooperflex, Zooper Flex. Until next time, keep it classy, Fantasy Twitter.